Hello, empowered woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman Podcast. And I'm on a roll. Here comes another interview with an empowered man that is empowering women with his life story and his coaching. I had the pleasure of talking to Gary BARNES, the breakthrough business mastery coach, a high-performance business and sales strategist, popular national and international speaker with over 1,000 talks, award-winning #1 international Amazon best-selling author. He's published 9 books, and he has been featured in many outlets, including the Boston Globe, LA Daily News, the Miami Herald, and he's also been a TEDx speaker. The list goes on, and I will let him share more about his amazingness, but we talked about so many insightful topics like enjoying the journey, learning to become better instead of bitter with circumstances that we can't control, and most importantly, how to stop looking for answers and start asking questions instead. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Empowered Woman Podcast, the #1 show on personal development for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to stop spinning your wheels, trying random personal development resources, and actually boost your confidence to show up fearlessly in your life and business, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yes, I am so excited. So recently, as I'd mentioned before, I decided I'm open to interviewing men, and we had such an amazing conversation connecting through a mutual entrepreneurial group. And I just knew I had to talk to you because just like what we were talking about right before this, we have similar philosophies, similar ways of looking at things and coaching people and coaching ourselves. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about who you are, what you've been up to. I know it's a lot, but let's see how much you can fit in.
Yeah, in about 20 seconds.
Yes.
Well, I would consider myself a serial entrepreneur. My first business, I created a newspaper. We had a subscription base of one, my mother, actually two, my mother and my grandmother. But, so it was something that's always been in my blood. And with an early background in school, psychology, theology, obviously, it led me into business. I spent about 9 years, 9 years in real estate, and then about 30 years as one of the largest financial planning firms that I created. And then because of all of that, I sold that practice and people were wanting to know how I did it. I found myself in the coaching arena, and I'm an author of 9 books. I'm the kid next door.
I don't know about that. Well, you're very friendly and it's very approachable. So I agree with that. But in terms of all the things that you have accomplished, there's a lot in there too. I would love to hear a little bit more about the story of your first book, because that was one of the things that we talked about when we had our connection call, and something that I think people would not even know about you just by talking to you right now.
There are certain things that I do. They say, you walk deliberately. And I go, yes, because I do not want to fall down. But the first book was something in 1988, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and was told I would be dead or in a wheelchair within 10 years.
Wow.
And because I was right in the middle of my financial planning career, I didn't tell anybody. People don't want to give you money if they think you're going to die. And so it's kind of a downer. And so I told the neurologist literally, and there's a story behind the whole process of that diagnosis, but I told the doctor, the neurologist, that it had to catch me. I wasn't going to wait around for it. And so what happened after I sold the practice is Joe Vitale from the movie The Secret had reached out, put my story a little bit into one of his books called Expect Miracles. And so then I really wondered, why would anybody want to read about my story? But that was the start. And I wrote the book. The original title was Into the Night, The Road from Adversity to Triumph. And it did pretty well. And then one day I get a package from someone that had invested in the book and had heard me speak. And she sent me a 3.5 foot beaver. And so that has become Big Buddy and Little Buddy Beaver. And my coach at the time said, I am so excited. He wanted to change the title of the book, and we did. And it's called How a Beaver Saved My Life. And because of that, it's taken me to PBS, all the major networks. TEDx called me to do that story. But it really, I wrote the book not as a MS story, and I wrote it as an adversity story, to where I am the subject of what I went through, but I wanted to have it be a process that somebody could read and apply it to anything they're going through, whether it be financial, relationships, health, whatever it is. And to be able to be not just maybe I would say a heartwarming or sometimes even a funny story. Uh, a side story to this is I have very little feelings in my hands, never learned how to type, so I spoke in all my books. And people say, it sounds just like you. And I go figure, I spoke it. And so, but that book has opened the doors. And it was really about the reaction that we all have. We have challenges, we have roadblocks, we have, I call it the speed bumps that we weren't expecting, and it's what we do with it. How do we use it? Particularly now, everything that we're all going through on a global basis.
Yes.
This is probably the first time truly a global situation that we're each dealing with in some way. How are we dealing with it? What is it pushing us to create something new? How can we become better for it? Instead of the old adage, how do we become bitter? And so really the story was, yeah, I'm ornery. I'm 31 years past the original diagnosis, and anything over 10 years I call bonus time. So I'm in bonus time.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that so much. And what you just said about becoming better instead of becoming bitter, that is so true. Because I was just thinking about this the other day with how 2020 seems like it's one thing after the other. It just never doesn't stop. And then I was just thinking, that's life. There's always going to be one thing after the other. And this year seems more overwhelming because it's global. It's not just our individual lives being affected, but that's just the way that it is. And ultimately, the only thing in our control is how we react to it so that we make it better instead of getting bitter about something we can't control, that it's in the past, and just resenting because we didn't act a certain way or somebody didn't act a certain way. Can't change it. So focus on what's in front of you, right? And cherish those bonus years, which have gone so much past the 10. That's amazing. I love that story.
Well, about a week ago, I was speaking to a group, and I said, I got good news and bad news. I said, the good news is what we're dealing with right now will have an end. The bad news, there will be another challenge beyond it.
Yes.
And so, like what you just said, is I heard you say, this is normal. This is something that we're going to have no matter what. And it may be on an individual basis, it may be on a community basis, but there will be challenges, and that's called life.
Yes, exactly. As long as you're alive, if nothing's happening, something's wrong. There has to be something, right? The ups and downs. And I always I heard this once, someone comparing the heartbeats, like the monitor, when you see the graphics, that is life. It's the up and the down, because if it's flat, then you're not alive. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and in reality, we live in a world of duality. If there was no down, there's no up. If there was no good, there's no bad. If there's no right, there's no wrong. We live in a world of duality. So to have something that always goes up, and we're in a world of panacea, it just doesn't exist. And so it's also how we get to appreciate the ups, because the downs, there's nothing to compare it to.
No, exactly. That's when you learn gratitude, right? When you lose something, or when it's not there for a while and you're like, oh, I took it for granted. And then you get to really experience gratitude. Now let's talk a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey, because one of the things that actually recently I was talking inside a networking group about the importance of mindset and personal development. And someone said, yeah, it is important, but more so making the right decisions, picking the right business at the right time. And I agree with all of that. But based on our conversation, I know that you know the importance of
asking yourself those tough questions and spending that time understanding yourself more so than looking outside of yourself for that right opportunity, connecting with the right person and all of that. Can you tell us a little bit more? Because I'm sure people have sought you for advice with that. Tell me the technique, tell me the strategy, and I'll be like you.
Well, it really comes down to learning how to trust yourself.
Mm.
And it's the intuitive guide that each of us have been given that most of the time people think it's them talking to themselves. And I've come to understand for me that it's really an outside source.
Mm.
And when I really listen to it and intuitively know this is the right direction that I need to take for me, then it usually has a positive outcome. And one of the questions that I offer my clients is that when you're offered an opportunity, ask this question: does this opportunity take me towards or away from my ultimate journey?
Mm.
But then you have to know what that ultimate journey is.
Yes.
And so most people haven't done that. They haven't done the internal work. And I truly believe success in pretty much anything, but particularly in business, is 80% psychological and emotional, 20% tactical.
Mm.
And the world, the industry has it backwards because everybody's
Yeah.
looking for that magic bullet, that
Yep.
magic bean that is going to all of a sudden make everything overnight a success. They're going to win the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that people say, well, Gary, you're a success. You're an overnight success. And I go, it only took me 30 years to get here.
Right.
And, it's that illustration of what do you call it? An iceberg, where you only see the top part of it.
Yeah.
90 to 95% of that iceberg is below water.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mindset of keeping us in the game, what is it that we're doing and why are we doing? What's the value of doing it? Because whatever we do, we're using the most valuable asset that each of us have, and that's our time.
Mm.
Once we use that time, we can never get it back. Those that of you that are watching this, I really want to be able to give, and I know that Marta does too, is that it's really important because you're investing your time to be with us today.
Mm-hmm.
The time that we are spending together, we can never get back. And so, what is it that we're doing to invest, not spend? And so, that mindset of being deliberate, being consciously in tune with what we're doing and why we're doing it, not that it's always going to work out.
Yeah.
That I have a phrase called launch and adjust. So when it doesn't really turn out the way we want, we can adjust it just a little bit to get a different result.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not in tune to the what I call the integration within ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't have a lot of resiliency to take those ups and downs.
Yeah.
And we look at those as the downs as an indication that we're maybe not supposed to be doing what we're doing, or
Yeah.
we're doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily that. It's just those little tweaks.
Yes, yes. And I completely resonate with that too. And that's something that I've been learning is I've been using a lot the word forgiveness and forgiving myself for making those mistakes, because at the end of the day, I need to make some of those to be able to know that that's not the direction that I needed to take. And that is okay. And I think with what you were saying, that the focus in the industry, when you think business, when you think entrepreneurship, is the tactics. And I think a lot of that is probably a tactic so that you can sell more, to say, this is what you've been waiting for, and this is going to help you, and you won't make any mistakes anymore, because if you follow this, it's going to work, which is not true, because just like you said, you have to test things out, launch and adjust, and then do it again based on the information that you collected of what did not work. And if you look at life, that really is how it is. That's how we learn anything. I mean, looking at my kids, learning how to talk, learning how to walk, they're making mistakes left and right, and that's how they learn. And we don't punish them for it, right? We shouldn't, for certain things, at least for the basics, of learning how to walk, talk, and all of that, because they don't know any better, and we forget all of these things along the way. So what are some of your tips? I know you asked, you talked about asking that question, is this taking me towards the journey? And then you have to know what that journey is. How can someone go about figuring out what that journey is? What are some of the things that have helped you along the way?
Marta, that's a great question, because most people look for answers. I look for questions.
Mm.
And when I was in my 20s, like a lot of people, I thought I knew everything.
Yes.
And then as I have had more experience, I didn't grow older, but as
Yes.
I gained more experience, I realized so much of what I knew was about what I didn't know. And so now I'm in a search for better questions, not better answers. And even in my practice, one of the things that I have learned for me is more of it's called a Socratic, so where it's a process of asking questions of individuals for them to come up with their answers, even though you may know the answer, but it's allowing them to break through their own cocoon, if you will, to strengthen their wings so they can fly, not be attached to you. And when we ask the questions, it's being open to other possibilities. Maybe it's even uncomfortable answers that are coming back to you. It's like asking a question of children. They are going to tell you the truth.
Yes, what you don't want to hear.
There is no filter. But the reality is it's a new awareness. And then we get to put it through our filter, whether or not it has relevance, and we can attach some significance to it that allows us to up our game, to be able to be more relevant. But in order to ask the questions, we have to do one more thing, and that is what I call active listening. Is you have to be in tune to what question to ask, and you can only do that by listening to the conversation, either from inside or outside. It's both.
Yeah.
Because so much of the time we really tell ourselves to shut up and sit down.
Yes.
We don't have to have other people outside of us tell us anymore. But it's that process of truly listening, honoring the question, and then asking it. And then being open to whatever that feedback is, and then seeing if it fits. And if it does, great. Willingness to change and apply is also one of those things that we have a resistance to.
Yeah.
Because so much of the time when we do change, we are going into unknown territory. And we don't like change. We like predictability.
Yeah. Oh, and that's so interesting because it's not really the pattern that we're accustomed to. We are used to just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But at the same time, we don't want to do it because it's somebody else telling us. It's just so twisted. Whereas if you just took the time to figure out yourself and ask yourself what you need to do, you already know. It's just a matter of taking that time. And like you said, it all starts with trusting yourself, trusting that you already know that answer, but you're not taking the time to listen because you don't think that that's really what you need to do. And probably because you don't want to do it because it's uncomfortable. So it's just this cycle that never ends of, I don't trust myself. So I'm just asking for outside opinion, but I don't want to have people telling me what to do, or I don't want to do what they tell me to do. It's very interesting how the human psyche works.
Well, and we give up our empowerment when we do that.
Yes.
And part of that is not wanting to be wrong. But like you said, it's only in the mistakes that we learn.
Yes.
What was it? Edison that said in the light bulb, 9,999 times he found out what didn't work, not failures, what didn't work.
Right.
And the thousandth time the filament worked, I guess. And so, but that really is the same thing as, you were talking about your children, is that how many times did they fall down and they didn't say, well, walking's not for me.
Yes.
They did it till they figured it out, until they found their sea legs. And then all of them had some of them would crawl backwards, some of them would crawl forwards, some skipped that altogether and they started climbing. And it's just, we all have a certain pattern. And that's where having permission, one of my Garyisms is life is a solo journey, traveled with many. We do not have to be the same. In fact, there's no way for us to be the same. We're all unique. And then so embracing that uniqueness is being 100% perfectly imperfect. Once we understand that perfection doesn't exist, is that we're already 100%, and having permission to use that and to still be human, that's where the magic happens.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And really with my kids, I've been learning that so much with them being all the same age, born at the same time, because it's just like you said, they all have their timing. And one of them started walking at 11 months. The others took longer. And some of them took longer sitting. And it's such different patterns. And we tend to want to compare to make sure that we're not behind. We always have this fear that we're behind. And once we understand that we are already at our 100%, I love that too. Then it makes it so much easier to just start taking those steps, because you're not looking to the sides to make sure that you're on track or not, which is, again, tricky because we need those references as well. But I think we end up taking it too far into not just a reference, but just a comparison. And then we fall apart because we can't measure up to other people, because really we can't.
Well, and so many people are looking for that ultimate goal, that reaching the summit.
Mm,
And, one of the illustrations I've used over the years is if you look at point A as being where you are, and point B is where you want to go to. The moment you reach point B, what does it become?
mm,
Point A.
yeah.
It's where you are. It's the only thing you can be. And it's the journey that is the value.
Yes.
And that's where we have to remind ourselves. And I had to learn this because there was years I didn't take vacations because I was building a lifestyle for my family that I was not participating in. And
Mm,
that's one of my passions, is to give people permission to live a life, enjoy the journey,
yeah.
because the destination technically doesn't exist until we're no longer on this planet.
Exactly.
And
Mm,
so why are we doing what we're doing? What is the value? And again, that goes back into the investment thought of how am I investing my time, my energy,
mhm.
my money, and for what purpose? So it's a value decision, not always just a money or a task decision.
Yes. Oh, that's so valuable. So how do you work with people right now? I know you have several different things going on, but what are some ways that you have been coaching? I know you do lots of speaking, and unfortunately, with what's going on, I know you haven't been able to travel as much, but still doing lots of stuff virtually. How can we find you? How can we see more of your resources? Tell us more of what you got going on right now.
Well, one of the easiest ways is always social media. I'm on Facebook a lot. People think I live there. I actually don't. It's a way how not to be there, but be seen a lot. So social media, my direct email address is gary@garybarnesinternational.com. I do have individual and group coaching programs.
Mhm.
I have one that's very economical, where we meet as a group coaching twice a month on Zoom for an hour, and people have been on those for a long time.
That's
We
nice.
have a lot of fun together. I produce 3-day boot camps. The next one is coming up in September.
Okay.
Number 38.
Oh my
Hard
goodness.
to believe that it's that many so far.
Mm.
And it is one of those events that, we always hear about it's life changing and business changing. This one, because of how it's designed, actually does it.
Mm.
And it's organically been built into that. It was like most of the things that we do, we don't know why we do it or how we do it, but it was just like, it is something different. So
Mm.
that comes up. We have a speaker boot camp that I do with Michelle Morath,
Nice.
another TEDx speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, if anybody has a question, I always answer my own emails. And it's about serving. It's about being able to give that hand up to that next generation, that next person. I can only touch so many people,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons that I enjoy doing these type of programs with people like you,
Mm-hmm.
because I can have that connection with you, that you have a connection with 1,000, that they have a connection with another. So we
Yeah.
exponentially increase those touches.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's my books on my website, GaryBarnesInternational.com. The Alpha and the Omega is the Beaver book, the
Okay.
adversity, how to overcome adversity. The last book, my 9th book, is The Power of Get Statements, and that is truly how to reboot your brain for success.
Mm.
You can reboot, you can program your subconscious, and it's the fastest way. And everything that I teach, I have designed. These are my proprietary programs.
Mm.
So it's just a lot of fun to be around people and to hear their stories and to make a difference.
Yes. Oh, and I love the name of this last one. I'm going to have to check it out. And just everything that you said about, answering your own emails and really having that servant's heart. That's what makes it the difference, because you've gone through the journey and it's not like you're keeping it to yourself. You're wanting to help people understand what took you so many years to understand and touch other people's lives, understanding that if you share that, more and more people are going to benefit from it. So I super appreciate you taking the time. It has been amazing connecting with you. And I look forward to seeing the response of everybody once they hear this interview and to go check out your resources too. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Aren't you grateful I started opening the show up to men? I sure am. Don't forget to connect with Gary and check out his upcoming events. All the links are in the show notes. And do connect with me and tell me your thoughts on this interview and on the podcast. Do you have any suggestions of male guests you'd love to hear from? Do let me know. Until next time, bye.